In a world drowning in noise, notifications, opinions, arguments, commentary, the ancient Stoics dared to suggest something radical. Sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is say nothing at all. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, warned his students, "It is better to trip with the feet than with the tongue." And yet, thousands of years later, most of us are still stumbling. This is not a guide about going silent forever. It is about knowing when silence is not weakness, but wisdom. When it is not avoidance, but strategy. When staying quiet is the most eloquent, most powerful, most human response available to you. There are 9 such moments, and learning to recognize them might just change the way you live. Situation 1. When being criticized unfairly. Picture this. You've poured weeks into a project, late nights, early mornings, sacrificed weekends. Then, in front of the entire team, your manager tears it apart. Not constructively, harshly, unfairly. Your heart pounds. Your face flushes. Every instinct screams at you to defend yourself. But what if the most powerful thing you could do is say nothing? Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled one of the most powerful empires in history, faced critics his entire reign. And he wrote this in his private journal. If something outside of you bothers you, it's not the thing itself that's hurting you, it's how you think about it. And you can change how you think at any time. The Stoics understood something most of us forget in the heat of the moment. Unfair criticism says nothing about you. It reveals everything about the person delivering it. So the next time someone attacks your work without reason, pause. Take a breath. Let the silence do the talking. Because a calm, composed response, or none at all, is the most powerful statement you can make. It shows strength that no angry comeback ever could. Ask yourself, what would you gain by engaging? And what might you gain by simply letting your work speak for itself? Situation 2. In the middle of boasts. Imagine you're at a networking event. The music is low, the drinks are cold, and across the room a colleague is holding court, loudly announcing their new raise, their luxury vacation, their corner office upgrade. You feel the pull, the urge to match them, story for story, achievement for achievement. But a Stoic would do something different. They would smile, nod, and stay quiet. Not out of weakness, out of wisdom. The Stoics believed that a person who needs to announce their worth doesn't yet know it. True confidence is quiet. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need an audience. Epictetus, a man who had been enslaved and yet became one of the most respected philosophers in Rome, said that we should return not one benefit with another, but many. Not with words, but with actions, with the quiet, consistent excellence of how we live. There's a certain dignity in the person who listens fully at a gathering, who laughs at someone else's joke, who celebrates someone else's success without needing to top it. That person leaves a room remembered, not for what they said, but for how they made others feel. So the next time you feel the urge to compete with someone else's boast, try this. Smile, listen, and let your silence carry more weight than any words could. Situation 3. When dealing with anger. It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday. But then your colleague submitted the wrong version of the report. Again, hours of your work gone. The deadline is in an hour, and they're standing right in front of you, apologizing, looking nervous. Every fiber of your being wants to explode. This is exactly the moment the Stoics trained for. Epictetus taught, keep quiet most of the time. Speak only when you must, and when you do speak, let it be worth the silence you broke. Marcus Aurelius asked himself a piercing question. How much worse are the results of anger than the things that made us angry? Think about that. The thing that sparked the anger, usually small. The wreckage anger leaves behind, often much, much larger. Burned bridges, regretted words, damaged trust. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. When he walked out, he could have been a volcano. Instead, he chose silence over vengeance, and that silence became the foundation of an entire nation's reconciliation. Anger is not the enemy. Uncontrolled anger is. And the space between the trigger and your response, that's where your character lives. Next time anger rises in you, treat it as a signal, not to act, but to pause, breathe, And choose your response the way a wise person would choose their words, carefully, deliberately, and only when necessary. Situation 4. Silence in the face of false rumors. In a small town, a beloved teacher woke up one morning to find her reputation in flames. Whispers had spread. Accusations, false ones, were circulating at school, at the market, in living rooms. People she had known for years were suddenly looking at her differently. She could have defended herself. She could have argued, explained, begged people to listen to reason. Instead, she did something quietly radical. She went to school, taught her lessons, graded her papers, and smiled at the parents who now doubted her. She chose silence, not because she was guilty, but because she understood something the Stoics knew well. Truth is patient. It doesn't need to be rushed. It doesn't need you to fight for it every second. It simply needs time. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You hold power over your thoughts, not over outside events." The rumor mill was outside her control. Her character, her integrity, her daily actions, those were hers. So she focused there, and slowly as the weeks passed and no evidence of wrongdoing appeared, the whispers faded. The truth became its own defense. Epictetus said something counterintuitive. When someone speaks badly of you, respond with kindness or silence. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. When false rumors surround you, remember, every word you use to defend yourself feeds the fire. Your silence paired with consistent integrity is the only water that puts it out. Situation 5. How to deal with loss. C.S. Lewis, the man who wrote about magical wardrobes and talking lions, once wrote something that had nothing to do with fantasy. It was raw, painful, real. After losing his wife to cancer, he wrote, "The pain I feel now is the happiness I had before." That's the deal. There's a profound Stoic truth buried in that sentence. The Stoics believed that loss and love are inseparable, that everything we are given will one day be returned, not as a punishment, as a natural part of the cycle of life. Seneca, who faced his own exile, poverty, and eventually death with remarkable calm, wrote, "The day we fear as our last is the birthday of eternity. When loss finds us, and it will find all of us, the natural instinct is to fill the silence, to stay busy, to distract ourselves from the enormity of what's gone. But the Stoics invite us to do something harder. Sit with the silence. Let it speak. Let it teach." Lewis didn't try to explain away his grief. He sat in it, wrote about it, examined it from every angle. And in doing so, he didn't just survive his loss. He transformed it into wisdom that has touched millions of readers. Grief is not a problem to be solved. It is a process to be honored. And sometimes the most healing thing we can do is stop talking, stop explaining, and simply allow ourselves to feel. Situation 6. Navigating ignorance with Stoic grace. In 1633, a brilliant man stood before powerful men and was told his understanding of the universe was wrong. Galileo Galilei had spent decades studying the stars. His telescope had revealed truths that overturned centuries of assumption, and for it he was put under house arrest. He could have raged. He could have declared war on the ignorance before him. Instead, he waited. He wrote. He kept working quietly. History, of course, vindicated him completely. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not over outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." We all meet people like Galileo's accusers, people whose confidence far outpaces their knowledge, people who are wrong but convinced they're right. And it is deeply frustrating. But here's what the Stoics understood. Arguing with ignorance rarely cures it. It usually just feeds it. The person who responds to ignorance with patience, grace, and quiet confidence isn't weak. They're strategic. They know something the other person doesn't. The truth doesn't need a champion in every moment. It only needs time. So the next time someone dismisses what you know to be true, remember Galileo. Nod. Return to your work, and let reality make the argument for you. Situation 7. How to deal with rumors. She was a community leader, an environmentalist, a woman who had spent years fighting to protect the forests and rivers of her region. And then someone started a rumor that she was corrupt, that she was pocketing donations, that her advocacy was a cover for personal gain. It wasn't true, not a word of it. But the rumor spread fast, through neighborhoods, through social media, through the kind of whisper networks that are almost impossible to fight directly. She could have issued denials, held press conferences, threatened lawsuits. Instead, she planted trees. She kept showing up to community meetings. She kept doing the work. She kept living the values she had always preached. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike the person who hurt you." Epictetus offered this wisdom: if someone says bad things about you and it's true, fix yourself. If it's a lie, laugh at it. She chose to laugh quietly through her actions. And slowly, the people who had doubted her watched her behavior and recognized the contradiction between what they'd heard and what they saw. Rumors need fuel. They need reaction, denial, drama. Silence starves them. Consistent character kills them. The most powerful thing you can do in the face of a lie is to simply keep being true. Situation 8. When confronted with injustice. On February 11, 1990, a man walked out of a prison where he had spent 27 years. He had been jailed for fighting for the freedom of his people. He had every reason, every moral right, to emerge with fury in his heart. Instead, Nelson Mandela walked out of Victor Verster prison with his fist raised and peace in his eyes. As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison, he later said. Epictetus wrote, "Bear and forbear, endure what must be endured, forgive what must be forgiven." The Stoics were not passive in the face of injustice. They believed deeply in virtue, in doing what was right. But they also knew that our greatest power lies not in what we do to others, but in how we choose to respond to what is done to us. Mandela's silence, his refusal to match hatred with hatred, didn't just change his own life. It changed a country. It helped heal a wound that had been festering for centuries. When injustice finds you, ask yourself, what response will build something? What response will make the future better, not just feel better right now? Sometimes the most powerful act of protest is not a shout. It's a steady, principled, patient silence that prepares you for meaningful action. Situation 9. How to handle insults with Stoic wisdom. In 1930, a British official struck Mahatma Gandhi in public. An insult, a humiliation in front of witnesses. Gandhi did not raise his hand. He did not raise his voice. He looked at the man calmly and walked away. Later, he was asked about his composure. His answer was simple: "I refuse to let anyone walk through my mind with their dirty feet." Epictetus had said something strikingly similar centuries earlier. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. An insult only lands if you let it. If you engage, you confirm that it had power. If you respond in anger, you hand your peace to a person who has done nothing to deserve it. But silence is armor. Silence says, "I know my worth, and your words cannot diminish it." Marcus Aurelius returned to this idea again and again in his private journals. How much worse are the results of anger and grief than the things that made us feel those ways? Gandhi's quiet response to insults didn't just protect him, it made him more powerful. His enemies grew frustrated, then confused, then eventually diminished. His dignity remained intact always. The next time someone tries to provoke you with insults, remember, the most devastating response you can give is simple, calm indifference. Not because you don't care, but because you care about things far more important than their opinion. Your peace is worth more than their provocation. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his private journal, a journal he never intended for anyone else to read, "Don't waste time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That is perhaps the greatest lesson of Stoic silence. It is not about what we refuse to say. It is about what we choose to become, in the space between provocation and response, between hurt and reaction, between noise and meaning. The world will always give you reasons to raise your voice. The Stoics invite you to ask each time, is this one of them? Often the answer will surprise you. And in that surprise, in that quiet pause, you may find something rare and precious: peace. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more timeless wisdom from Stoicism, and we'll see you in the next one.